Hello, everyone. My name is Emable Mugabo. Welcome back to our series on motivation and decision making. In our previous conversation, we talk different things. We talk about expectancy value, task value. We talked about the culture. We explored the situated expectancy value theory in different contexts. So today, we are still having a conversation with Dr. Eccles. Today, we are going to talk about the future of motivation, the future, especially for frustrated expectancy value theory. Dr. Eccles, welcome back.
Thank you very much. It's delighted to be back. I think this is a very interesting time to be thinking about the future for a theory like mine, and Alan Wigfield's.
How do
Uh,
you see the future of frustrated expectancy value?
one of the things so we just completed a book that will be coming out in September, then which we outlined a lot of new ideas and made our projections as to what were important directions to go in the future. So, as I've talked to some extent, Svet came out of the cognitive revolution in psychology, when people began to say, look, the brain does a lot of things, many, many things, and many, many things are under rational control. And up until that time, American psychologists in particular had focused more on the role of reinforcement, the role of modeling, and less on the role of the brain as an organizer and as a network that controlled behavior. And so the motivation that grew out of them, the basis of Svet, was what kinds of thoughts did people have that would lead to motivated behavior? And that's why we focused on the two questions. Can I do it? And do I want to do it? And then the third question is, how do I do it? And these were quite conscious uh, questions that we assumed people made as they were trying to decide how to spend their lives, what they wanted to do with their time and their energy and their gifts. So that was in the 1960s when this revolution started. So a long time now, my whole career. And in the last 10 years, we've seen more information emerging on how the brain also is an emotional organ. It is responsible for feelings. It's responsible for anger, for love, for desire, for reinforcements. And that has a lot to do with what Svet is about. We're about what things people choose to do. Well, we now know a lot more about the brain in a way that we could begin to talk about, well, what are the emotional issues that are operating in motivated behavior? What are the fears and anxieties? I mean, we talked about that as being part of cost. So, what prevents a person from achieving the goals they want to achieve? How do they learn to navigate the world that they're in? And deal with the emotions they have as they go through, as you've talked about before, trauma, wonderful experiences. I mean, we're learning all the time from both rewards and punishments in our lives for things that make us happy and things that make us sad. So now I see Svet as being ready to really try to work closely with people who are trying to understand the brain as an emotional organ, as an organ that guides emotions, responds to emotions, and has to deal with emotions in the process of motivating the actor, of motivating the person whose brain it is. So I see a great deal of future along those lines where we really begin to understand where basic needs come from, why some people enjoy sports and competition, whereas others find that very anxiety provoking. These are all interesting individual differences that reflect both the genetics that operate in the person as well as the accumulation of their experiences. And I think that we're going to see a lot more work in the next 20 years that tries to bridge the brain as a cognitive decision maker, rational, and the brain as an emotional organism.
Wow, wow, wow. How uh, how new direction should researchers know? What new direction should researchers explore in motivation?
Well, I think we're seeing a lot more people looking at motivation using tools that allow us to visualize what's actually going on in the brain.
Mm,
So you've probably seen these, the pictures of the brain that light up when people are thinking different things, that has allowed us to try to understand where in the brain things are happening. Well,
mm,
we now have tools that we can put on top of someone's head,
mm,
a net that can read the electricity in the brain as a person is engaged in real life activities. So, as they're playing a baseball game or a soccer game, or as they're preparing for a school test, as they're taking a test. So, we can actually look inside and begin to say, oh, now we understand why this person was having a hard time with that test because
mm.
their emotions cut in and they got very anxious and you could see it. And then you could tell them, look, now we have to work on helping you manage those emotions so that you can demonstrate your understanding in a clearer manner, a manner where your brain focuses all of its attention on the task that you're doing rather than fighting the emotional reactions. So that's going to bring together clinicians. It's going to bring together learning scientists. It's going to bring in together neuroscientists. And I hope that we will be able to begin to move on some of these really tough questions.
Yeah. So I want to bring you back things I think when you have been talking about back many years compared to the society today. How do you think how changes in society shaping motivation today? I want people to understand how these changes in society is shaping motivation for today.
Well, I think one very good example is we're seeing play out in the political world in the world right now. So Donald Trump is our president. He has lots of goals that many people believe do not reflect a democracy and do not reflect a caring democracy. But there are others who think that it does reflect capitalism and a focus on profits. And so a lot of the West has built their systems to be motivated by profit and have taught children they should go for jobs that make lots of money. And this has created a distortion, I think, that allowed someone like Trump to be elected. Now, as we go forward, we as multiple civilizations are going to have to deal with whether we want to continue down that route or whether we want to say, wait a minute, this is wrong. This is not the best way for humankind to go. We need now to think about raising children in a different way. We need to get them to think more about the good of their community, the good of their families, the way they can enrich other people's lives and give back to their community rather than being focused primarily on what they can take from their community in terms of profits. And I think we're at this very critical point right now as a world. And it's being addressed very differently in different cultures. And I think it's going to have to come to the fore, and there's going to have to be more discussion about what we want the next generation to value and how we want to make that happen. And if we don't, we're going to exhaust the earth. I mean, it's very clear we're going in the direction of not having adequate clean air and clean water to support human life. And we have to change I believe we have to change our stance in the world in ways that are much closer to the way countries in Ghana do it now, the way countries that are more familial in their orientation and more uh, non-competitive in their approach to life. We can learn a lot by looking at how those kinds of economic systems work and what we need to increase the likelihood of those occurring. So, motivated behavior is grounded in the cultural values, and families socialize their kids to operate in the value system that is their culture.
mm,
If we hope to change the outcome, we've got to start changing what we teach kids about what's valuable.
mm, mm. So, uh, coming to the technology, how do technology and new learning environment both influence motivation?
Well, technology opens the world up in a way that kids from all over the world can be exposed to many, many different things. And we know that exposure is one of the ways that they learn as they grow up. The mind is just taking in information, and what the information is coming from what's provided, either what you see around you or what you connect with on screens. So screens are very, very powerful in what they provide to young people, and the technology that allows young people to imagine new worlds, different worlds, to get them excited about what needs to be done for mankind and for themselves. Technology can be used for this. Your dissertation is a very good example of what technology can do. Technology, to the extent that it is used by people, can help them farm quite differently, which will have immediate benefits, health benefits, family income benefits, neighborhood resource benefits, and all of that can be done more effectively by using technology as a tool and by helping today's young people be prepared to use technology as a tool when they reach adulthood. So I think that's a perfect example of exactly what I think the future holds for using technology as a motivational resource.
Mm, mm. I know you have been talking about the stated expectancy value theory. I really want you just to talk about again how it can be applied across different cultures and contexts.
Well, it operates in a context. So you must understand when I say situated expectancy value theory, I mean the expectancies and the values are situated in the culture in
Mm,
which the work is being done.
mm,
So the I mean, if you ask someone what they want to do and what they want to become, they can only reply in response to what they've been shown and what
mm,
they've been told. And technology can open that window so that a student who never would have thought of getting a PhD like you have at least gets exposed to to the fact that that's a possibility, a
mm,
real possibility. They could do that if they wanted to. And
mm,
if they wanted to, where would they go to find out how to
mm,
do it?
mm,
Uh, that's the power, I think, of technology from a motivational perspective.
mm,
How are they exposed to new things and new opportunities that would impact the subjective task value they apply to a whole range of things?
mm,
And what role do schools and families have in helping to guide the child through the world of technology? I mean, it's vast, so a kid can't do it all.
mm,
And the situation that they're in and the culture they in provides a guidance
mm,
uh, to to what can reasonably be shown to a child and potentially in what order, and how do we keep them open-minded about the possibilities?
Mm, mm. So coming back to the situated expectancy value theory, how can this theory connect with other theories?
In lots of ways. I mean, I think that the ideas that come from the various cognitive theories are very similar. We are not at odds with each other at all. So if you look, for example, at the other currently most widespread theory, that's going to be just a minute. Self
Self-efficacy?
no, self-efficacy is the same as expectancies. So
Mm,
those are basically quite similar. But if
mm.
you look at DC and Ryan's work,
Okay,
uh,
determination.
right, when so they're wanting to understand how various uh, uh, needs change a person's ability to um, to be engaged, to be self-determined, and be engaged in particular activities.
Mm,
We would say the same thing, that in fact people will do better if they are self-interested in doing in engaging in the task. So they're not being forced to do it. They're doing it from their own will,
mm,
and that they have guidance from the culture that they're in about what things they could potentially think about doing.
mm,
So I think we are very, very similar in ways with self-determination theory, because
mm,
we would say, well, first of all, it's critical you have self-determination, because that is in part what answers the question, do I want to do it? So
mm,
you're not going to get a yes answer, do I want to do it, unless the person is actively engaged in picking the task. So we don't disagree. We think that's important. They believe that the underlying needs that people have are competition or competitiveness, essentially acquiring skills that are needed, social relationships, so having good relationships, and having a sense of autonomy. I would
mm,
agree that those are absolutely critical needs that affect the value of any given activity a person can take on. So
mm,
things that make them more competent will have higher value than things that don't.
mm,
And so they'll be more likely to say, yes, I want to do that.
mm,
Things that let you be with your friends and have a good social life will be more valuable than things that don't.
mm,
And that way they will influence the subjective task value. And
mm,
which of those is more important? That's going to depend on the culture that a person is in. So I see no discrepancy between expectancy value theory and um, self-determination theory. I
mm,
see no inconsistency between goal theory
mm,
and expectancy value theory. Goal theory has to do with, well, why does somebody want to do it?
mm,
And we would say that's what gives it meaning. So the
mm,
very things that get someone to answer the question, yes, I want to do it
mm,
for this reason and that reason, that
mm,
is the same as goal theory is focusing on. Why are they doing it? And
mm,
they would argue a person is going to be, will do better in school if they're focused on mastery than on competition. Well,
mm,
I'm not sure I agree with that, because I think that in fact one can do very well in school because one wants to be the best and because one wants to get better.
mm,
So those are not incompatible at all. One can always get better, and
mm,
one can always want to do their best.
mm,
So those aren't incompatible goals. What the
mm,
problem comes in when a person says, I can't do it.
mm,
So we want to set up learning situations so that they never say, I can't do it.
mm,
They may say, I don't want to do it. So, of all the things I can do, I'm going to pick only a few because I don't have infinite time. So, I can't get to be an expert at everything. I can only get to be an expert at a relatively few things.
mm,
And that's where goal theory would say, well, if they have this goal, they're likely to go in that direction. And I would say, yes, That will give the activity. So someone that really wants to master new things will find things that provide them those opportunities very valuable. A
mm,
person that says, I've learned enough, I just want to do my thing and have time to spend time with my friends,
mm,
doing their best in that activity may not have high value. So they
mm,
will do something else instead. So I don't think of them as incompatible.
mm.
Now, are there other theories you have in mind in particular that you think I should address?
Yeah, even my dissertation, you remember, I connected community capitals framework with situated expectancy-value theory. The community capitals, it was fitting into situated
Yes, yes,
expectancy-value theory.
very, very much. And expectancy value theories are just as common in economics as they are in psychology and business.
Mm,
So, when particular capitals are
mm,
assets that you have that you
mm,
can bring and call upon to achieve goals you want to achieve.
mm,
So we think it's good to have capital, and we think it's good to invest in acquiring capitals. So
mm,
the economists first, of course, were concerned about money,
mm,
financial capital. That was the most important. That
mm,
led to capitalistic theories.
mm,
Now the economists have begun to realize there are other forms of capital that one can have. One can have cultural capital, which means you know and have the resources to succeed in a particular environment in your culture. And that's
mm,
more than money, that's skills that you acquire as you're growing up. You
mm,
can have social capital because your family is connected. If you get in a position where you need to borrow money, then you want to have social capital because you can go to those people. We
mm.
would argue about those situations decreasing the cost and increasing the value of particular choices.
Yeah.
So the capitals are essentially a way of articulating domains in which one can have a lot or a little in terms of the resources to draw upon. That's what
Mm,
capital means. It's a resource you have that you can draw upon. We
mm,
would call it a set of skills and a set of values that you can draw upon.
mm. Even the straighted expectancy value theory has been used. That's me pick even in sport when I
Yes.
lead. So how the sport field end up using more your theory, straighted expectancy value theory? Because when I started to read it, I found it has widely used in that field as well.
Yes, it is. Um, I mean, I'm not sure what your question is
I wanted
because,
to understand why just it has been used in that field, because when I was reading many articles, I found also they used straighted expectancy value
well,
theory.
both economists and psychologists and sociologists are interested in what makes people do what they do. They take slightly different perspectives on it.
Mm,
So, an economist until recently, so behavioral economists, in my mind, are simply psychologists dealing with things that are in the monetary world.
mm,
So they don't differ in terms of their micro perspectives. So
mm,
economists have both micro and macro. And
mm,
microeconomists are interested in what's going on at the level of the individual and the
mm,
world close to them.
mm,
And that is usually where the motivational psychologists are interested in because that's the world the person can most directly affect.
mm,
Now, as they get some of them get more powerful, they start to accrue social capital, which starts making them able to have a big impact in the social system that they're in. But not everybody has that or has that goal or has that power. But
mm.
you can think of these disciplines as sort of differing in the breadth uh, of what they want their findings to apply to.
Yeah, like sport exercise, running, those kind of things, because I found has been used to understand individual making exercise.
Right. So in the end, I mean, I'm a psychologist because I think in the end it comes down to people acting.
No.
But I understand, like a sociologist would, that the environment that they're in can either support or restrict their ability to do certain things.
Okay.
So we have to look at it both ways, from inside out and outside in. And the different disciplines weight it somewhat differently in their orientations. But I don't
Uh,
think they're incompatible. It's more an issue of what level of phenomena they're trying to explain.
so, Dr. Eccles, you have been in education field, if I recall correctly, more than 40 years.
Yeah.
So, what changes are needed in education to better, just to better support motivation?
Oh, there's so many. We have, I think probably the most basic that needs to happen is eliminating age-based tracking. So when we have grades, first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, that
Mm,
means we are tracking kids
mm,
based on their age.
mm,
Now, that's because we assume
mm,
that they share a history based on their cohort.
mm,
Well, I think that's wrong. And I also think that cross-age teaching may be the best way to learn.
mm,
So we've set up a system where the adults
mhm,
teach the kids, and the kids are separated by age, which also separates them by skill level.
mm,
In a family,
mm,
kids help each other. So the younger kids know they will learn to be like their older brothers and sisters by watching and cooperating.
mm,
That's a very different model of how instruction should go on. Now,
mm,
we know from many scientists that education happens best right at the barrier between what you don't know and what you do know.
mm,
So it's
mm,
at that interface
mm,
where learning occurs.
mm,
That may, in fact, happen best between people who've just learned it and people who are ready to learn it. So,
mm,
this would be where you would have a 5-year-old teaching a 4-year-old what the
mm,
5-year-old knows.
mm,
And the 4-year-old will love it because they will say, I will get better because soon I will be like my 5-year-old brother or sister. And
mm,
then, of course, they will be, the brother and sister will be 6. And they will say, now I can become like my 6-year-old brother or sister. So
mm,
that much better fits the idea about how human learning occurs naturally in family settings and in tribal settings where you're learning from each other as you navigate the environment that you're in. How do
mm.
we replicate that in a classroom? Probably not best by sorting kids by age. We
Yeah.
could we could sort kids by what they know and then allow them to teach each other,
Mm,
or we could put together large groups of people that are operating as a group teaching each other
mm,
with a teacher being there to guide what's happening. Now,
mm,
when I was in Ghana and in the US long ago, that is
mm,
the way schools were. There would be many kids of different ages in the same school building.
mm,
And you would have an adult teacher who was trying to make the most that they could make with those resources,
mm,
including the children themselves as resources.
mm,
So I think if we would go back and think about education from that perspective, we would
mm,
design it very differently.
mm,
And I think it would then just be naturally
mm,
more appropriate and would be more motivating because the kids would constantly want to get better
mm,
and they would never be primarily compared to other kids of their same age and wonder why they can't do it. They
mm,
would always be comparing themselves to kids older than them and
mm,
saying, I can do it. I just have to practice and I will get like my older siblings. So
mm,
it sets up an entirely different dynamic, motivational dynamic. So
mm,
that's not going to happen. I wish it would happen. I think we can learn a lot by looking about humans' evolution and
mm,
what worked.
mm,
rather than trying to invent new things that are not necessarily likely to work.
mm,
The other thing I think we can do is this is what technology is going to allow is
mm,
for education to be structured more by the machine
mm,
to fit well with your current competence level. So the way I just said it, it was by mixing kids of ages so they could naturally come to learn from the people who were better than them. Well, a
mm,
machine can do that too. A machine can test what you know and
mm,
then provide you practice
mm,
right at that interface.
mm,
So I think the sooner we start thinking about making individualized instruction that builds on what you know and trains you at what we know what somebody would call the zone of proximal development, which
mm,
is that place that is just a little bit better than you are now.
mm. So even it seems I was having in mind to ask you a question, advice you can give young researchers studying motivation. You covered some amount of uh,
Yes,
many
I
things.
I would love young researchers to go and test these ideas
Yeah.
because culture sets up the way we think about schools.
Mm, mm,
And it's hard to change culture.
mm,
Evidence needs to be gathered that shows we can do it better in
mm,
ways that are not structured by grade level, by age, but that are structured more by the zone of proximal development.
mm. Wow. So, Dr. Eccles, thank you. So, understanding motivation is not fixed. It develops, it changes, it responds to the world around us. When we understand motivation, we can help people make better choices and shape their future. So,
Yes, yeah. I mean, nobody is unmotivated. The question is, what are they motivated to do? Not
mm,
are they motivated? So
mm,
motivation is specific.
mhm, mhm,
And if a teacher says the child is not doing well in my class, the teacher should ask, well, why not? How am I not meeting their needs? How am I not teaching them what they would be motivated to learn? What would they be motivated to do?
mm, mm,
And then shifting and trying to address that so there was a better fit between the child's goals and the opportunities the adults are providing for them to learn.
mm. Wow, Dr. Jacque Eccles, thank you so much. It was wonderful to have this um, interview because I know many people will learn from it. Thank you.
Well, good, good.
So, uh,
Thank you.
you're welcome.